Welcome to US-based news channel. Ukraine started the production of unmanned aerial vehicles. First example of a 1,000-kilometer range unmanned aerial vehicle has been published. Russian soldiers began to flee through the gate to the industrial centers of Donbass. With the escape of the Russian soldiers, the Ukrainian army begins to gain the upper hand on the critical line on the Luhansk front. Russia is trying to make up for the lack of equipment on the fronts with its soldiers. Ukrainian Deputy Minister of Defense Hanna Maliar made important statements on this issue. Ukrainian Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal made a remarkable speech about the European Union. Expectation of Ukraine to become a member of NATO and the European Union continues. Mutual attacks have now begun to push both sides a lot. Ukrainian army gained significant advantages in many aspects. As tensions between countries increase, mutual attacks on the fronts also increase. As these attacks increase, more military resources are required for the fronts. Russia is dealing with great difficulties in this regard. As it is known, it receives sanctions from countries for many reasons, such as starting the war and targeting infrastructures. This causes serious problems both in the field of military industry and in military requirements on the fronts. Ukraine, on the other hand, is getting stronger day by day thanks to the support from other countries. This ensures that Ukraine becomes advantageous in the course of the war. This time Ukraine is starting to produce unmanned aerial vehicles. Ukraine's arms industry company, PUT1N'S State Concern, said in October that development of an attack drone had been completed. In early December, he announced that a series of successful tests had been carried out on an attack drone with a range of 1,000 kilometers. Developments continue in this regard. Ukraine's arms industry company has now released the first example of a 1,000-kilometer range unmanned aerial vehicle, and has conducted airspace tests of these vehicles. He reported that production of the first sample was sped up as much as possible and that they were testing it in the airspace. He announced that he was prepared for the next phase, namely for the use of the Ukrainian armed forces. Ukraine continues to strengthen its defense by continuing both production and Western support. Moreover, while Ukraine's offensive and defensive power is increasing, Russia's is decreasing. This ensures that the war progresses in favor of Ukraine. Moreover, mutual attacks on the fronts are increasing. Intense clashes have been taking place recently, especially in Donbass. One of them is Luhansk. As it is known, there are important logistics points and industrial centers on this front. Moreover, one of the most important points on the front is the Svatov-Kreminna line. Intense clashes have been taking place on this line for about 4 months. Moreover, this front has great importance both in terms of logistics, military and geography. Increasing conflicts at the front in recent days have begun to put a lot of strain on the Russian forces. In fact, important information about the Russian soldiers at the front was shared. Head of the Luhansk Oblast Military Administration, Serhiy Haidai, reported that the Russian soldiers on this line fled towards other regions. He also stated that the Bilo-Harivka region is completely under Ukrainian control and that the attacks of the Russian soldiers are repelled daily. Russian troops are trying to send more soldiers on this line. But many of these soldiers are hiding at the front. At the same time, Haidai stated that the Russian troops prepared a strong defense line on the Luhansk front, and that it was getting harder to get every meter back because the area was mined. But with successful and strategic moves, their solution will be found. It is also known that this Svatov-Kreminna line is a gateway to the important industrial centers of Donbass. For this reason, if a control is provided on the line, both the advance to important industrial points will be easier and the flow of Russian military shipments on this front will come to a standstill. This situation will cause the Russian soldiers to become weaker and weaker on this important front. In addition, Russia's current military inadequacies also cause serious problems. Ukraine's Deputy Defense Minister Hanna Maliar reported that the Kremlin fills the battlefields with military personnel resources when it does not have the required amount of technically ready military equipment. At the same time, Maliar announced that, taking into account the operational reserve for 2023, about 280 formations that are part of the Russian forces are currently operating. He claimed that this figure was 250 last week. As can be seen within the scope of these developments, the war is now reaching a serious level of difficulty for both sides. Moreover, Russia is now aiming to strengthen its troop group on the territory of Ukraine. It was even stated that the mobilized soldiers were moved from the training areas in Russia and Belarus to the border regions and the battlefield. Although Russia tries to cover up its military inadequacies and complete its shortcomings with such steps, it has difficulties in reaching its goal. On the other hand, President of Ukraine Zelensky stated that this year, which we have just entered, is very important for the country and they need more support from all over the world. He also stated that in the war started by Russia, this is the only way to end the war. At the same time, he explained that the Ukrainian forces needed new defense solutions for the removal of Russian soldiers from Ukrainian territory. He also stated that in order to achieve this, new sanctions against Russia are needed, as well as modern tanks and effective artillery. In addition, the Ukrainian leader explained the necessity of achieving an unforgettable victory for Russia and that they cannot attempt such a war again. Zelensky also stated that he is looking forward to the NATO summit to be held in Vilnius, and stated that he believes the summit can be a destiny for the entire Euro-Atlantic community, and they will do everything to make it so. As it is known, the issues of NATO and European Union accession have become the topics that have been frequently discussed in recent months. Last statement about joining the European Union came from the Prime Minister of Ukraine. Ukrainian Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal stated that he expects the signing of an agreement on Ukraine's accession to the European Union within 2 years. Shmyhal explained that the negotiation path awaits Ukraine, and they must go through negotiations that will result in the signing of the agreement on accession to the European Union. Noting that Ukraine has preparations in this regard and what needs to be done in this regard, Shmyhal seems extremely optimistic about this. For Ukraine to join the European Union, there are things to do and conditions to comply with, and it seems extremely difficult for Ukraine to enter such an international union while the war continues. But Ukraine is certainly good at doing what seems impossible and difficult, as demonstrated in the war. In the future, such moves and all events that occur between countries will have a more critical importance. For this, all the steps to be taken should be very careful. Now, the decisions made by the countries and the moves made on the fronts have to be in a much more strategic direction. If one side makes a mistake, the other side will gain a significant advantage. In these days when the violence of the war has increased considerably, every move has become much more critical. Now, if the support for Ukraine increases and Russia's losses reach irreparable proportions, the war will start to progress completely in favor of the Ukrainian army. We'll see what happens in the next few days. We have reached the end of another video. You can support us by liking the video. You can easily follow new videos by subscribing. I wish you all a war-free day. See you.